start to fail. And I guess we'll probably have some help. Is there any confirmation on that about the grid? And
oh yeah,
what's
that was in my report. The solar event is going to pretty much, it's expected anyway, to wipe out our entire global grid, electrical grid. Now, it sounds scary, but this will also create a situation to where all AI influences will be removed from the solar system in a literal flash. At that time, when we have all of the technology that we know of that's no longer working, the SSP Alliance has stated that this would be a perfect time to disseminate all the new technology to all of humanity at once.
Well, it's good. I hope they're busy making a lot of it.
Yeah, there's going to be a time period. This technology is going to come out, and then you have to wait for the research and development. It's going to take a while for us, a lot of this technology to actually get into our hands, but it'll be out there.
I heard Omnic said that some of the good guys will come down and will help us with that after that.
I'm sure they will.
That's wonderful.
Everybody will be billionaires, basically. Not from money, but from the resources that we'll have.
Would this take place before the heliopause, or we don't know?
That we don't know. That's a lot of the that part is a lot up to us at this point.
Okay. Can you describe the living condition of the workers of the ICC bases, industrial complexes in the moon, and other facilities? Are they all kind of like that one you went to, or are there various ranges of freedom and abilities?
That at the Mars facility, that was the only time I saw living quarters. I had been brought to other Mars facilities in the past when I was in the program, but we would come down when ICC didn't have assets in the area to fix a critical piece of hardware or equipment. We would come down and our expert would fix it for them, but we were always escorted. And the one area I remember going to, they did have a wall where people were putting up art and, you know, some stuff like that made it, the place was a little bit cozier than the facility we toured. But the people had the same gaunt look to their faces. They were just kind of shuffling around in a zone in their own, you know, they were not happy looking people. And we were told not to make eye contact or speak with anybody. And when we would stop at a certain area, the security guys would say, "Eyes on your boots." We'd have to look down so we couldn't see what was occurring when certain doors were opening.
This is when you were in the program?
Yes.
Okay. There's another question in here, and it seems natural to ask it now. You're out there for 20 years. Could we hear some of the type of things that you did? Were you mostly involved in support in the bases? You went to other systems? Maybe give us a jump to another system and what you did and what your position was, and how did you spend 20 years? And give us maybe some highlights that you remember that you feel free that you could tell us about what you were doing for 20 years.
Yes, I didn't have a rank. They called me a specialist, and I helped the eggheads out quite a bit when I wasn't being used for interfacing, which wasn't that often. So the craft was completely modular. We would open up the walls to make the craft real big to where we could take on cargo, or the walls would come back together and we would build out all these separate rooms for different experiments and different groups that were doing experiments. So it was a lot of work of, you know, breaking down, putting things back together. We had a lot of redundancy training to make sure everyone could do each other's jobs, as well as many, there were, you know, fire bad when you're in space. There were many fire drills you spent a lot of time with a spray bottle and a rag going around cleaning the walls and the floors and the area that you were assigned, and at the same time inspecting the area, looking for any types of cracks or chemical that had been rubbed off on it. You'd need to report that or do a chemical swab to identify the chemical for various reasons. And there was always this one spot in the area. There was a portal about this big that was glass, and there was always forehead grease right above it where people stopped and just leaned and were looking out the window. So whenever I was cleaning, every time that there was forehead grease there.
So a lot of maintenance. Tell us about one of the more exciting programs. It sounds kind of like just you're kind of like a construction engineer. You act as an interfacing. Give us some examples of your interfacing, maybe in another system, and what that was about, or I guess you didn't.
The bulk of the interfacing I did while in the program was for the intruder intercept and interrogation program. And those were non-terrestrials that had come into the solar system without the proper clearance or giving a friend or foe signal. And many of them had been caught on the surface of Earth. Some of them had technology that if you were to look at them, they would look completely human to you. But if the technology was turned off, they would look completely hideous to you. And they had incidents to where they had pulled people that were like executives at companies in the middle of the day out of their headquarters on 14th, 15th floor. And everyone in their company thought that they were a human, their boss. But it turned out that this was a non-terrestrial. And they were taken to facilities to where they were interrogated to see why they were there, who they were reporting to, where their support staff was located in the solar system or beyond, to get what information they could.
Did you get that information? Can you give us some examples?
Yes, the interrogators were very effective. Basically, what they had Intuitive Empaths do is stand behind the glass and read these beings instead of interfacing with them to let them know when they were being deceptive or when they were scared, when they were the most vulnerable, so they could apply certain tactics. It was a very unnerving job because these non-terrestrials were terrified. They were terrified.
And what were they there for? What were they doing in that?
As many different agendas as there were beings.
No kidding.
Yeah, some of them came in for quick raids to scoop up people. Some of them had been responsible for taking entire villages in third world countries. So, and some of them were just here to study. They were here to study the jungles, forests, or oceans, and many times they could care less what we were doing other than how we were affecting what they were studying.
So they did have a little thing, kind of like Galaxy Quest, right, where they just change. Remember the comedian movie? But
well, there was one being that I saw that it was sort of insectoid. It had sort of an insectoid body, but its face, it looked, I guess, almost like a seahorse. It was a very strange looking being, and it had kind of like a separate bicep and tricep that went like this, that caused the arm to move. And on one of the segments that was part of the bicep, when they captured it, it had a kind of like a bracelet that was on. And when they would touch the bracelet, it would cause them to vibrate real quick, and you wouldn't be able to see them. They would be moving around, I guess, kind of like, what's his name on... No, there's a movie, the guy that moves real fast... Kind of like Flash, but it was a recent movie.
Invisible, but they wouldn't phase out. They would just be in the room.
Yeah, he's just moving so fast that you can't perceive it.
Okay.
And some of the security, one of the security guards had taken one of these devices, put it around his arm, and turned it on, and it shook him violently and broke his neck. He in his back. He died. So it just shook him. It shook him, and he just died.
that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Curiosity killed security.
Yeah, it didn't work on him.
Okay. Do you have any knowledge regarding which group is behind the vaccination? Is that Draco, maybe the Omegans, or whatever, this Earth-based cabal?
I worked at a company, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the United States anyway, and I did computer support, and I was supporting some of the engineers, the biologists, and they were talking about all the stuff that goes into these, and they produced the for the flu virus. And they said that there was insect DNA in there, and all kinds of stuff that they said they would never give themselves or their family one of the shots.
Yeah. For those of you who are listening out there, do not vaccinate your children. They'll take them from you in the hospital. Keep your babies close to you after they're born, and say no to vaccinations. Do you know the population for Mars?
No.
For the SSP, maybe? Do you know approximately how many bases and what kind of numbers are there?
Well, the ICC had over 100 bases, and this was probably when I knew of it, it was probably in the early 1990s. And they were still building out.
We're still building out. And were those, do you have any idea of the size or numbers? Not really.
Well, some of them were facilities that had, like I said, 250,000 people. A lot of them were real small, with like 15,000 people. And there were other small outposts that were built that would just house maybe 28 or 30 security personnel on the surface.
Along that lines, did you ever hear of this thing like Randy Kramer talked about, the insectoids and stuff on Mars?
Yes.
Kind of thing that were coming out and
Yeah, there were some insectoids that used sort of a biological technology. They would very quickly, I guess, clone out of their own genetic material smaller other beings that would act as weapons or go out and recon and do things for them. And they had there were incidents to where security personnel would see them walking the perimeter, and they had a technology that made you see them as human. And there would be, when the security guys would get back to their outpost after their shift, I guess, they would describe what they saw, and each of them saw a slightly different thing. They were not seeing the exact same. They'd see a man with sandy brown hair. Another one would see a man with black hair. They were not seeing the same thing.
Okay. Can you tell us, the SSP or from any of the other positive groups that you've contacted, can you talk about, and I don't want to necessarily call Ananukai or the planet Nibiru, but is there any information that you would say is definitive regarding a planet or a dwarf star like Alex Collar says may be coming, that comes through, causes changes in the solar system, and eventually heads out?
Yes, and this Nemesis star does not enter our solar system. It has all of its effect on our star from very far outside of our orbit. And as it comes into a closer orbit, there's a stronger electrical connection and several other types of ways that it interacts with our solar system that causes objects in the Oort cloud to be tossed towards the inner solar system. Now, yes, we're aware of the Nemesis star. I have not seen it up close other than through a remote viewing. As far as planets, there are quite a number of planets and planetoids ranging from the size of around a little bit smaller than Pluto to extremely large, about the size of Earth, that are in a wide orbit outside, in the outside where the Oort cloud is, And most of the big ones are not in the elliptic plane like most planets are orbiting. They're sort of like Pluto. It's about, like 17 degrees or something outside of the ecliptic. There are other very large bodies like that are rotating around the sun that are out there.
Wow. So I guess our solar system has many, many more planets.
Yes, there are more planets and moon planetoid-sized.
Okay. The other question in here is, when the planet has its influence in the Oort cloud and as it start sending projectiles through the system, are these possibly a danger? Can they hit the Earth? Will the Earth be shielded by the SSP? Is it possible the benevolence will protect that, or is it just random, they're going to let it happen to other worlds, and does it cause volcanic activity?
There are some groups that would not interfere, that say they just let nature progress the way it should. There are other beings that are very vested in what's going on Earth, that have invested in these 22 different genetic programs. I guess they've been referred to as the genetic farmer races. They're very invested in this experiment on Earth, and they would most likely protect us.
Okay, we have the genetic farmer races, and we've heard the word harvest. We spoke the other day, you and I, and that kind of puts I guess, a dialectic for the human populace to be kind of like, just seen as an experiment, whereas I was thinking maybe it would be more like there's a graduation, we're looking here, and some people are going here, and some people are staying in the 3rd grade, some people are going to the 7th grade, some people are moving on into different areas. Could you talk a little bit about this genetic experiment as far as you know it, and maybe put a friendly, happy face on it for us so we're not like harvested and all that stuff? Is this a soul thing?
Harvest, I believe the person in the Law of One, Carla, when you're in contact with these beings, they're going to use language that's familiar to you. And from what I'm told, she was a very strong Christian, and that is language that is used in the Bible. So this was language that she was familiar with, that was being used to communicate with her.
That was another question I was going to ask, because in the Law of One they had the Bible, and also cosmic awareness. The Dr. Beater symbiosis group there from way back in the 70s was bringing some of this information forward. Had very specific abilities or ways to communicate with the channel that was, or I guess, a vehicle of the oracle. Can you comment a little bit on what the Raw Tier group talks about the Christ? And I had a conversation, the first interview with you. I asked, you said, well, the Christ, and you said they nodded and affirmed, and I was like, I wanted more information. They nodded, affirm, whatever, dude, or we understand and know and respect that being. And you said, no, they nodded that they understand and respect that being. Can you share what you know about the incarnation of Christ and the Christ consciousness for this planet and for the universe as it relates to planet Earth?
Well, the blue avians, when I was going through the period of trying to figure out what the heck they were, because when I was in the secret space program, I'd never heard of 8-foot-tall blue birds. Never. So when the contact began, I was a little concerned. And I wasn't just, going on my knees saying, tell me more, tell me more. Like I said, I was looking for zippers. I was looking for any weird signs that something weird was going on. And I decided, test the spirits, like, I was told growing up. So I asked them their stance on Jesus. And they bowed and showed reverence and stated that they had much respect for Jesus and his teachings, and that their teachings are the same.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
They're the same as his before they got distorted, of course.
Yeah. No, before it got distorted, Cap.
Before humans got a hold of it and used it as a control system.
Twisted around. How has your coming out affected your children, your wife, and your other friendships of family or family?
Right now, with my family, I can tell the cat's out of the bag a little bit, because my nephew has been asking me questions. He's saying, "I'm seeing you on the internet a lot with this other guy with yellow hair." And I'm like, okay. And he asked me what these big blue balls are. And I'm like, ooh, okay. So he's like 9 years old. I doubt he's surfing and finding this on his own. I think my family has looked into it, seen it, but they don't know how to approach me on it. As I said before, I fully expect at some point to come for Thanksgiving and for there to be an intervention with the preacher from our church and all that. So I'm already prepared to sit there and smile and nod, and I'll take any prayers anyone wants to give me anyway. So I've been expecting that, but it's had an effect on. There's been some stuff that we don't make public that has occurred around the house, and it's affected my wife. She's gone into quite a bit of depression here and there, because she just recently awoken in the last couple of years. And so this was still extremely new, all new concepts for her. You know, she really wasn't that much into science. She didn't really understand celestial mechanics. And so there was a lot of Q&A like is going on here with her.
Well, that's good. I hope that everything stays stable for you and your family and everyone stays happy there. What is the kind of swoosh and all the NASA symbols represent?
They we're calling them chevrons, I believe, but it is a representation of the secret space program, and also there were apparently two similar shaped, I don't know if they were satellites or craft that they had found in the early years of NASA, that they had found when they were looking into the heavens, that were in orbit around the Earth for a while. And supposedly they had made contact with whichever group this was.
If you don't mind, would you share your personal healing experiences with Kari?
Yes. The mind meld that we had was such an intense experience that I have not been the same since. She sat directly in front of me, and we leaned over like this, and we had our hands out, and she put her hand into my hand like this, and I felt myself pull out of my body and stop directly in between the two of us, and she came out as well, and we kind of blended in the middle. And as I stated, I began to see all these different time periods of her life as she was looking at those time periods of my life. What occurred more than anything was we had a sharing of vibration, of energy, and I carried that with me afterwards. And she said that because of the way that we had interfaced, she was connected to me in a way that would have her looking in on me for the rest of my life.
Okay.
The healing and changes occurred in just kind of an organic fashion. They just kind of, I all of a sudden didn't want to eat meat anymore. I started losing a lot of weight. And as I stated, I was finally able to, I was going through a lot of surgeries. I was on pain meds. I was on different pharmaceuticals. And the doctors told me, you've been on these pain meds and muscle relaxers, Xanax. They had me on all kinds of stuff. They said that I most likely am chemically dependent on them, and it was going to take a long, protracted process to get me off of them. But I was able to quit all of them cold turkey with no symptoms.
Have you heard anything about chemtrails and what we can do to protect ourselves from those? Is there anything that do you know, like what's in that soup?
No, I'm not real familiar with chemtrails, other than they've observed tankers, non-terrestrial tankers, that are both dumping gases and other things on populated areas, but these same vessels they've seen move over the ocean and lakes and pulling large amounts of water out. Other than that, I don't know about the agenda or all the details of chemtrails, and I don't know about the details about 9/11 either.
We spoke yesterday. You mentioned that there's both positive groups putting in good things in our atmosphere as well. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. How can we help or advise others about ascension if 1 in 2,300 will move forward into the next vibrational dimension? I guess that means right now.
Right. Well, it's nice to advise others on ascension, but the best way to affect others is to walk the walk. Make the changes in yourself and be an example. Let them see. If they see that you're happy, you're blissful, they're going to want a piece of that in this world. Everything's so dark. So they're going to come to you, and they're going to observe you quietly to figure out how they can have that. You know, it was a shockingly small number that Thierry told me about. He said less than 300,000. And when I did that, David pulled out his calculator to find out the percentages and all that. But this information, it was delivered as a cosmic wake-up call. For all of us that think that we're already in that number, guess what? You're most likely not. It means you need to really work right now on stopping the wheel of karma through forgiveness of yourself and others. If you stop the wheel of karma, you're going to be able to run faster. You're not going to have this parachute behind you that's slowing you down.
How many of the world leaders are aware of the secret space program, Harvest, this whole dynamic?
Very few. Some of them are read in a little bit. They may get the master briefing that a lot of these lower secret space program members get, that first they come and massage your ego, say you're so valuable, you know what, we're going to put you on the top need to know information, you're at the top of the totem pole, and the people, they believe it. Their egos kick in and they're like, okay, there's nothing above this. So there are some world leaders that have had that type of briefing, but for the most part, they hear things from constituents in the military and that kind of thing, but they can't get any real information on it.
Okay. And I guess these are probably stars. Do you know what happened to MH370 and MH17? I'm not sure what that is now. Okay. What is it? Oh, those are airlines. Okay.
Yeah, Gonzalez did tell me that there was activity at, Diego Garcia, that coincided with one of the craft disappearing. I haven't had any confirmation, but I've heard all of the same conspiracies and rumors about the two disappearances. But there was some sort of operation. I don't have the details.
We don't know why or who.
No.
Okay. Can you talk about, or had you describe any other inner Earth civilizations other than the ones you've mentioned on cosmic disclosure? There's obviously many, many different Agarthan networks.
Yeah, there are many more. These were this group are the only ones that I've been introduced to or have met. but they are the most influential of the inner Earth groups, the largest in, population-wise and the most influential.
Those artist depictions, were those pictures that we saw in your program, were those part of the, did you have those made, or those just?
I had those, Vashta, an artist, created those for me when we worked together. They are fairly accurate representations of what I saw.
Okay. Can you give us a description of some of the ETs that attend the secret space, I guess, briefing meetings?
Well, we don't normally have non-terrestrials present at briefings. The only time that I've ever been at a secret space program internal briefing where there were non-terrestrials was when I was at the meeting where the Blue Avian and the Golden Triangle headed being appeared. Otherwise, they're closed meetings. We don't, non-terrestrials aren't there.
So I thought you mentioned that there's only one meeting where you had, there was a meeting I thought that you were doing it as a delegate for like a lot of different
The Super Federation, yeah.
But there were no Earth people there?
No, there was, when I was younger, we had one delegate station that was a rotating seat. Different members from the Secret Earth syndicates would rotate members in to sit at the seat at different meetings. But they had to fight very hard, and it took a long time for them to get invited to this meeting.
Can you tell us at the Super Federation meeting of 40 when Rod Tier, I guess there were many groups that you'd mentioned that they had been caught on the Earth, had been trying to go somewhere. Can you talk about what they look like, or where they're from, or what was going on there?
Well, yeah, there were some that looked very human. I described the very odd-looking one that had this segmented-looking insectoid body, but this weird head that kind of came together, almost like a seahorse. There were several groups. There was one group that they would run into quite often that looked like human beings, maybe from the Mediterranean, that they always had real short black hair, very muscular, and they're about 5'5", 5'8", but they were very dense. These people would weigh like 500-600 pounds, and you would look at them and they would look just like a kind of a thick muscular person. You would think they weighed around our weight, but they were extremely dense and strong.
Can you describe the Mayan group when I think you went there, didn't you, to the Pleiades and they did the healing, or did you were you on a craft?
I was picked up. Their craft was made out of rock. It was a giant stone cylinder. And when you walked inside the craft, you were walking, the walls, the floors, the ceiling were all like polished stone. It was like they somehow just cut it out of the middle of a mountain and then just had it appear in space. And the technology was just magical. It was all consciousness technology. There were some things that just looked like stones that were kind of a weird shape that were floating in the middle of the floor that were technology that we would look at, and it just looked like a kind of a floating carved stone.
Corey, have you heard or read anything on the glass pad about the Lemurian civilization, and can you confirm that they are part of the Mount Shasta?
Yeah, I can't confirm if they're a part of Mount Shasta or not. If the term Lemuria was used when I was looking at the smart glass pad, when they were talking about the ancient breakaway civilizations, I don't know. I really wasn't familiar with Lemuria before I went in the surface, so a lot of times I would see information, and it would be like, if I saw Lemuria, it would just be like any other name or term that was being used. But they confirmed that some of these groups had moved under the ground during cataclysms and had brought Earth humans with them over other periods of cataclysms.
Okay, we talked about this last night. We talked about the different implant matrix and entity attachments, and the plasma scalar field that's, you said, we're all under mind control. I think it's the last one. I guess someone's asking, how can we neutralize that? What is the best way for us to overcome the matrix technology?
The best way to overcome the mind control and the various technologies that are used to control our behavior is to raise your vibration. And you do that through all the ways that this group is going to know how to do. You got to meditate on a daily basis. You've got to treat your body like a temple. You need to get on a high vibratory diet. And most of all, you need to start working on these inner things that we've been talking about. If you stop the wheel of karma, then you're freed up to work on raising your vibration even more. You're not going to have anything pulling you back. So it's if you do all the things that you're supposed to be doing, you're going to mitigate any mind control that is being used on you.
Okay. Someone asked, is there also a blue sphere that exists around the 50-plus nearest star systems that you talked about?
No, the local star cluster, each star system is going through or has gone through what we are going through now. Some of them have gone through it thousands of years ago. Some of them are right where we're at. There's at least one other planetary system that is in the same place that we are and is trying to regain its freedom, and these energetic changes are occurring in various stars at different times. So they don't have the need to put one of these spheres around the entire local star cluster.
Okay. How is it possible for me, or I guess it would be for anyone, to know if they were part of a secret space program or any program?
Yeah, that's if you don't have a decent recall of incidents, it's going to be pretty difficult. If you're having a lot of dreams and partial memories of being in space, of seeing certain scenes over and over again on bases or in craft, that's a good sign that either you are in a program or you've just been taken up there on multiple occasions. So it's best not to jump to a conclusion. You know, I remember being inside vessels with Earth military people, therefore I must have been in the secret space program. That's not necessarily true. You could have just been MILAB'd. So the best bet is to find, if you feel like there's something there that you need to remember better, find a reputable regression therapist who has a degree in psychology. Psychiatry is the best to find, but most of all, you want one that's been doing it for at least 10 years. Otherwise, you can do more harm than good. Some of these people accidentally implant memories in people. So you have to be very careful whose hands you put your mind in.
Why was it so important for the U.S. government to hide the knowledge of ETs in the 50s? I mean...
Well, it sounds simplistic, but they try to say they were doing the responsible thing because none of you can handle it. You would all freak out, suck your thumb, and go into the fetal position. That's literally what they think. But the real reason is that all of the people that controlled the military-industrial complex also had their thumb in the oil industry, pharmaceuticals, banking, and they saw if they wanted to suppress these technologies but let us know about non-terrestrials, well, first thing we're going to ask is, how did they get here? What kind of technology do they have? And that's just going to open up the can of worms that they want to keep closed. If they were to disclose non-terrestrials, they would have to disclose technologies that would have collapsed their control system.
In the financial system, Dr. Frank Stranger says that Laura's great-grandfather said, we've looked at this and it would cause too much problems in our financial system was one of the
That wasn't his thing, that was everybody else.
Right, it was the advice. I mean, I don't know, maybe that he was
Well, I know that
threatened.
Nixon said, listen to the president, and, because this is a quote that Frank Stranger I had in my presentation that I skipped over, but Eisenhower and Nixon both wanted to disclose everything, and they vetoed it, and everything shut it down, but that's what he wanted.
Yeah, there was one group
Right.
that,
Still working together.
Right.
the Eisenhower administration, there was one non-terrestrial group. They met with like 6 in a short period of time. One of the groups had claimed to be our creators. They claimed that they had come here many thousands of years ago. They had created us from basically a root race that was here. And back in the 50s, most of the military people were right-wing, Bible-thumping Christians. And anything that said humans were older than 7,000 years old or may have been created by another being did not fly. They were very suspicious of it to begin with. They thought that they were being manipulated. So there was a component of these groups believing that if information got out about non-terrestrials creating us, that it would destroy religion and all of our belief systems and reap havoc. There's some of them legitimately believe that.
If the blue sphere being fully pulled away from the sun and allow the full emanations to flood the earth, is that when all the AI will be wiped out? Or is that the sun?
The spheres are there to attenuate the energy coming from the sun. And as we get further in this process, the spheres are slowly fading away. And at some point, they're just going to disappear. And then at that point, we're supposedly going to be acclimated enough to handle this full influx of energy. Otherwise, we would all suffer from what they call end-time madness. You know, most of us would just go nuts. And we're already seeing a lot of that with the energy being buffered.
Can you talk about the Draco Orion Rigel story? We hear about that the Draco are from the Orion and the Rigel system. Are there good guys there too? And what was that history?
Well, I've heard from several different sources where the reptilians supposedly come from. Some of them have stated that they actually came from here, that this planet had pretty much been stolen from them by non-terrestrial groups that wanted to start this grand experiment with a human type of being. And that is what I've heard. Now, they reside in a lot of different star systems. Most of the star systems they reside in are star systems they have conquered. So it's hard to know the real history of a deceptive being.
Yeah. Okay. Corey, I was awake. No, I wasn't awakened, but someone was awakened at 3 a.m. a couple of months ago with an electronic beep. They opened their eyes to see a very small blue sphere, translucent, floating 6 inches above the bed. They sat up and looked at it, and it felt like it was looking at me. Is this a type of sphere being contact?
I've never heard the electronic sound associated with it. That raises my eyebrows a little bit, but yeah, I can't even read the emails anymore of all the people that are having blue orb experiences. Many have never heard of me or cosmic disclosure. They go and they just start searching blue sphere, you know, and here we are, we pop up. Justin DeCamps was telling me a story just recently. He ran into a guy that had no idea who I was, and the guy started talking about him and his girlfriend were laying in bed, and a sphere came in the room, flew around a blue sphere and left. And Justin talked to him a little bit, and it turned out that the guy had no idea who I was or any idea about the blue spheres. So this is happening to a lot of the population of Earth. Many, many, many people are seeing these blue orbs. And most of the time when a blue orb appears, they're imparting some sort of information or there as your wake-up call.
Can you tell us, are there still gray abductions going on? They seem to have kind of dropped out of the limelight. What's your story on the gray?
Yeah, they have reduced, but they still have a treaty to where they're allowed to do that here. So, yes,
is that treaty through our government?
Yeah, it was a treaty agreed on very early by our government, and we do the best we can to manage them, to track them, to find out who they're abducting. There's also the breeder program where you hear people being abducted and having all kinds of things done to their reproductive systems, including being impregnated and babies removed. There are several non-terrestrial groups that are involved in what they call the breeder program, and including the Greys.
Can I ask?
Yes. Yes. That's how hybrids are created in the breeder program.
Can I ask? The question was, what was your question? What did you say?
Yeah, how were hybrids created
Is
in
that
this
how
breeder program?
hybrids are created? Yeah.
Yes.
And I'd like to ask a follow-up question there. Can we identify any of those abductions and taking and doing the breeder programs as benevolent and part of a conscious agreement, or are these kind of abductions and violating of free will?
Well, some of the people that are being abducted are actually human incarnations of these beings. This grand experiment, these beings aren't here conducting the experiment. They're a part of the grand experiment. Many of these Super Federation groups will incarnate in human bodies to go through the process that we go through, and also they are monitored and picked up by the non-terrestrial group that they're from, their soul group, that monitors them throughout their life here on Earth as a part of the experiment.
Corey, have the Blue Sphere Alliance or any of the groups you were in contact with expressed an interest in recruiting intuitive empaths through you as opposed to other established channels?
No. There's been no communication with me trying to get me to recruit intuitive empaths for them, no.
Okay. Why are so many people, especially young people, dealing with mental illness today?
Well, we've got a large group of young people that are coming into this world that have never been in it before, that are higher density non-terrestrial beings that are coming here to assist us during this very pivotal time. And I'm convinced that there are a fair number of these beings in this room right now. Oh, the mental illness, yes. Not that part. The reason that they're showing signs that resemble mental illness is they don't like being here. They can't take living in this density. It's like living underwater, and they just can't handle it. And if they succumb to these feelings before they are awoken, then they're going to think that they're crazy because they have this knowledge, they have these experiences that don't make sense in this physical world that all of us live in.
Can you can you describe the Mayan breakaway healing experience? Or did we already do that yesterday?
Yeah, we did that.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
It was a repeat
How many
question.
questions are we going to do? Because I have to drive to Sacramento right after this.
Yeah, okay, very quickly here, I guess.
I want to answer as many as I can, but I don't want.
Yeah, okay, I guess you gotta go. Are there hybrid reptilian humans that get free of control and the Matrix?
You know, I have not heard of that scenario. Most of the reptilians are far more controlled than we are even. Most of them are infested with nanites or are just energetically controlled by the higher caste beings. So when this event occurs and it destroys any AI in their bodies, some of these reptilians are going to be very confused. And I don't know, it would be interesting to see what they're like when they're not under this control system, this negative control system. They may have an opportunity themselves to change.
Okay, I wanted to kind of, I guess, end it on a kind of a neutral or kind of a positive question.
Yeah, why not?
Yes. Can you confirm or talk about a feline species?
Yeah. This is a higher density species that they don't need craft. They just appear before people. There's been a capture or kill order out on them for some time, sadly, by the various secret space programs. And I actually saw one of these lavender-looking beings after they had been killed. And they had used some sort of electric net or some sort of device that captured them, and this being had been electrocuted, was burned. It had a very bad death. And it's sad because these are very loving, benevolent beings. And the secret space program wants to interrogate them.
Yeah.
So they've had a killer capture order out on them for some time.
Wow. And so kind of like that movie Time Jumper, they have a net.
Yeah.
That got 'em.
Oh yeah, Jumper.
Wow.
No.
Well, folks, we've had a lot of questions. We did not get to everyone, but I hope you are happy that we got through quite a few of your questions. Corey Goode, thank you for coming.
Thank you. It's been an honor to meet everyone here.